I'm recording now. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Christina, and she's going to get us started with just some information on platforms that we can use for classes. Go.
Cool, great. Okay, I'm going to pull up the slideshow. So 1 second. Okay, can everyone see my screen here? Perfect. Okay, so there are 6 different platforms you can possibly use with your student to communicate during this time. So you have Zoom, Facebook Messenger, Skype, WhatsApp, Google Hangouts, and FaceTime. So 4 of these, Zoom, Facebook Messenger, Skype, and Google Hangouts, you can use to share a screen with your student. So sharing a screen is what I'm doing with you right now. It's when your student will be able to see what you're looking at on your screen. So I'm sharing this slideshow with you, and you can see it on your screen, and it's pulled up on my computer. So here are the 4 you can do that with. If your student only has access to FaceTime or WhatsApp, you cannot share a screen on those platforms. You can still communicate on them, so you can still send messages on WhatsApp. You can send voice memos on WhatsApp, which is a good way to practice listening and speaking. And then on FaceTime, you can just talk, practice speaking over the phone. So we're going to go over the 4 ways to share a screen, or the ways to share a screen on these 4 platforms right now. And we'll start with Zoom. So let me exit out of this. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go over how to start a meeting in Zoom. So if you go to Zoom, the Zoom website here. 1 second, let me move this over. So you'll schedule a meeting. Can everyone see this screen? I'm sorry. I keep having to move my chat boxes over so I can see. Okay, so you'll go to My Meetings and schedule a new meeting. So they'll give you a list of different things to fill in. So you can name the meeting, just name class. You don't really have to put a description of your meeting. You can put when it will be. So let's just say it'll be tomorrow, 6 p.m. is fine, for an hour. If you only have you and your student in the meeting, you don't have to worry about the 40-minute limit. That's only if there's 3 or more participants. So if you are on the free version of Zoom, that's okay. You should be fine to go for an hour. I'm going to push that. Your time zone should already be put in. If you want to make your meeting recurring, so if you want to have class every Wednesday at 6 p.m., you can click this and fill this out if you'd like to. And then if you want your meeting to have a password, you can make that mandatory. Most likely a class with your student really doesn't need to be mandatory. It's just the 2 of you in it. If it's something like a bigger meeting, that's when people use this more often. And then if you wanted your student to have to wait in a waiting room, kind of like you all did to get into this meeting, you can enable the waiting room. You don't have to do that either. It's up to you. And you can push save. So you'll see here's a meeting that's scheduled. In order to invite your student, you can scroll down to join URL, and you see this right here. It says copy invitation. So you can press that. Copy meeting invitation. And now it's copied, and you can just send it to your student. You can paste it into a text message or messenger or whatever you use to communicate with them. Does anyone have any questions about scheduling a meeting? If you do, you can put them in the chat box. Okay. So in order to share your screen on Zoom, there are 5 icons at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So I'm going to stop this share. Sorry, 6 icons at the bottom here that say invite, participant, share screen, chat, record reactions. So you'll want to push the middle one that says share screen, and then several options will pop up based on your desktop, and you want to click the one that says desktop. So that means anything that's on your screen, your student will see on their screen. So I'm going to push desktop again, and now you can see my screen. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to Facebook Messenger. If you have any questions about sharing on Zoom, please type them in the chat box and we can answer them at the end of this section. So I'm going to call Sarah on Facebook Messenger. So when you get to Facebook, you want to go to your messages and go down to see all in Messenger, where I'm circling right here. Click that. All your messages should pop up here. So I'm going to call Sarah here. So find the video camera in the top right corner. And I'm going to click the video camera. There's Sarah. Okay, so now you're on a call with your student. So you want to share a screen. So the 5 icons here at the bottom, you'll see this middle one. When I hover over it, it says share your screen. So you'll want to click this. And this is what I was talking about, something popping up. So you'll want to stay on your entire screen. Click that, push share. And now Sarah's seeing whatever I've pulled up. So this is an example of something you might see with your student. It's a copy of the Ventures book, which Beth will be going over very soon, but just an example of what you may be seeing when you're actually doing your class. So let me minimize this. Again, if you have any questions about Facebook Messenger, put them in the chat and I'm happy to answer that. So to stop sharing, you'll see at the bottom where my mouse is hovering, it says stop sharing. So I'm going to push that. That means my screen is not being shared with Sarah anymore, but we are still on the call with each other. So to end the call, you still have to push end call. Rate your call. Now close that. Okay. Let's go over to Skype, Sarah. So if your student is using Skype, you can do the same thing on Skype. So make sure your student's added to your contacts in Skype first. And then contacts are right here. So add their username in here. So I'm going to call Sarah in Skype. Click on her name or start a new chat. The video is right up here in the corner. There's Sarah again. Okay, so with Skype, down here, the bottom right in the middle, as I'm hovering over it, it says share screen. So you'll click that. Again, click your entire screen. And now I'm sharing the screen with Sarah. You can't see it like you did in Facebook Messenger, but Sarah can see my screen on her computer. It is being shared with her, and you can tell because this is lit up as white. Okay, so I'm gonna stop my share with Sarah. Right here on stop sharing. I don't know what just happened. I think Sarah did that. And then I'm going to end the call. If you have any questions about that one, please type them in the chat. We'll get to them in just a minute. And then the last one here is Google Hangouts. So this is if you have a Gmail account and your student has a Gmail account. So you can sign in to your Google account, get to your Gmail, and you'll see 9 little icons or little dots up here in the right corner. So I'm going to click those. And the first thing you need to do, if you haven't done it already, is add your student to your contacts. So you can go to contacts, create contact. And then you'll want to put their name and their email in. So they're in your contacts here. And then you can go back to your Gmail. And right here, you'll see your name pop up. So here's my name and a plus sign. So you'll want to click the plus sign to start a new conversation with your student. So I have Sarah in my contacts, so I'm going to click her name. Sorry, I'm trying to move that. Okay. And you'll see the video camera right here. Click this. Okay, so now I am on a call with Sarah on Google Hangouts. You'll see 3 dots up in the corner. I'm going to click those. And you'll see share screen. Again, share your entire screen. Share. And down here in the corner, you can see that Sarah and I are seeing the same screen. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here. Into my call with Sarah. And that is the 4 platforms you can use to share a screen. So if, I'm going to stop sharing right now. If your student does not have a computer and is using only their phone, you can share a screen from your computer to their phone. So as long as you are on a computer with those 4 platforms, they should be able to see your screen shares on their phone. It may be a little more difficult. They may have to zoom in more or hold their phone close to see the lessons, but it is possible. So I want to make sure everyone knows that because I know a lot of people have students that don't have a computer or don't have access to some of these applications on their computer. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, I'm looking here now.
Christina, we could probably, since it's a smaller group, maybe we could go ahead and unmute folks and see how that goes for a few minutes. Would that be okay? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. So if you have a question, you'll be able to jump in and I think everybody should.
Well, this is Diane. I submitted a question. The screen looked kind of small. I mean, the text and the pictures. Can you magnify that screen?
Yeah,
You can see it.
Yeah, so that will be something that Beth will go over when she goes over the Ventures presentation.
Okay.
It's in the actual presentation plus that you can magnify it.
Oh, good. Thank you.
The other thing, oh, sorry, I was just going to say it looked smaller because we were actually kind of doing like a very meta version of that. We were watching Christina share her screen with me and then seeing it the other direction. So it's just like it was a little bit smaller than it would appear.
Okay.
Any other questions about the platforms themselves before we move into
Which one would you think is the easiest for someone who hasn't done this before to understand?
I would personally say Facebook Messenger. If your student has Facebook, I think Facebook Messenger is really intuitive.
Okay.
I think Zoom is really great, but if it is difficult for you to set up a meeting, if that will be a challenge, then I wouldn't use it if you have another platform that's easier for you.
I think it really is a matter of personal preference at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Would you say that, Christina, is correct?
Yeah. Yeah, we just want to go over all the different options just in case your student is more comfortable with one than another. And that way you know how to share a screen with any of them. Do we have any other questions before we pass it on to Beth? If you think of anything, you can put them in the chat and we can get back to them at the end of the next section.
I'm going to go ahead and remute everyone. Let's see. And then we're going to go ahead, I can go ahead and jump into our next section. So Christina did a great job of outlining kind of the platforms that you can use to get you and your student into a meeting together, basically, to get to where you're kind of like virtually face to face. So now we're going to go over some programs that Cambridge has developed that will make it a little bit easier for you and your student to kind of literally be on the same page as you're going through this curriculum, instead of just like physically holding a book up to the screen. There are a few programs that you can use to make that information much more accessible. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as Christina taught us to do. I'm going to share my screen with you all, and I'm going to go back to that PowerPoint that we were looking at. And then I'll be jumping around to a couple different programs as I go through this section. But basically there are two main programs that I want to introduce to you all right now. So the first one is called Presentation Plus. So Presentation Plus is basically a program that you can install on your computer that provides you with kind of an interactive version of the student's book, which is the kind of the main book that you would use in class with your student when you guys are meeting together. So the one that's in color that has the main lessons that you guys go through together. It allows you to view all the pages of the workbook. It's got a couple great interactive features that allow you to play the audio from the lessons, make notes, view answers, things like that. When you use Presentation Plus in conjunction with one of the programs that Christina showed us that have screen share, your student will be able to see the same thing that you have pulled up on your computer. So basically it's a good way for you and your student to know that you're viewing the same material during your lessons. So as I said before, this PowerPoint and this recording will be available to you guys after this. So you'll have all of this information written in front of you. There's also a link to the Presentation Plus User's Manual included here. So if you have questions as you're trying to set it up, you can go there for assistance as well. But I'm going to go ahead and just walk through what the beginning of that process looks like, and then we'll take a closer look at the program itself. So all of the links to install the program are here in the PowerPoint as well. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what the beginning of the process looks like. So say I want to download the Ventures Basic program. This will take you to a link that is actually a link to the file in our IRWP Google Drive. So when you click on the link, you'll get a screen that says something like no preview available. It looks like you've hit an error message, but this is actually where you're supposed to be. So you're gonna hit this blue download button, and then it'll take you to another page that looks kind of like an error message. And it'll say that Google Drive can't scan for the file for viruses because it's too big. I promise you that you're in the right place. This is a program that we got straight from Cambridge. It doesn't have any viruses on it. I promise it's safe for you guys. We're not sending you into anything too sketchy. So you're gonna go ahead and click download anyway. and it'll start to download. And I'm gonna go ahead and cancel it because it takes a few minutes. And I already have it downloaded on my computer. But once it downloads, you'll go ahead and go into your downloads on your computer. And this is what it'll look like once it's downloaded. It'll say something along the lines of Ventures Basic P+. So you'll go ahead and open that and basically just follow the prompts that appear as you open that up. So it'll ask you, it'll basically say like, next, 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 until you get finished. It's basically just like downloading any other app or program onto your computer. So it's a pretty straightforward process. And then once you're done, you'll see an icon that looks like one of these. It's a blue square with plus right in the middle. And so you'll go ahead and open that, and that'll take you to this main page. So this is what the actual program looks like as you're using it. So like I said, it's basically an interactive version of the books that you would be using in class with your student. So I just want to point out a few of the main features that you can use in class. So down here at the bottom, there is a toolbar that allows you to kind of adjust the view of the books as you're going through. So Diane, you had a question about how to make the content bigger. So instead of doing that through Zoom or Facebook, you can do it through this program specifically. So you can choose to either view one page of the book at a time or view 2 pages like you would if the book was open. You can also zoom in to make things a little bit bigger. You should be able to see it getting larger as I'm hitting zoom on my computer. But that'll allow you to, like I said, especially if your student is using a phone, it'll allow you to zero in on a specific exercise that you're looking at and make things a little bit clearer and a little bit more easily readable. So once you have the view that you're looking for, once you get to the kind of the spot that looks good, there are several tools within the lesson that you can use as well. So for the audio components of the lesson that you would typically use QR codes with, all the QR codes in this program are interactive, so you can click on them like this one. And this little blue box will come up and you'll be able to play the audio or the video for the lesson directly through this program. And your student will be able to hear it on their device as well once you play it. So I'll go ahead and play as an example.
Information, page 7, exercises 2A and 2B.
You can adjust the volume and look at the transcript of the audio as well. These little blue key icons here, if you click on those, they will give you an answer key for that lesson. So you'll be able to check your work with your student as you're going through. Down here at the bottom, a couple other things to look at. I'm gonna go out of this Zoom really quickly. Over here, these 3 bars right here, if you click on those in the bottom left corner, that will bring up an interactive table of contents. So if you are not on Unit 1 anymore in your books and you need to skip ahead to something a little bit further along in the lessons, you can select whichever lesson you are currently working on with your students. So you can go there to do that. And then also in the bottom left corner, you'll see this little blue circle with a pen in it. This will pull up a toolbar that you'll be able to use to make different kinds of notes in the actual lesson itself. So I've made a couple just as examples down here. So you have a pen that you can use, which I've used here to write in the answer for exercise, for letter B in this exercise. You can also create little post-it notes that you can minimize and bring up. Sometimes it's easier to make a little note and type in the answer as opposed to writing it in with your mouse. That can, for me at least, that can be a little bit challenging, so it's easier to type in. You can also highlight different parts of the text as you're going through. So for example, down here in in this lesson or in this exercise, I've highlighted the words names and numbers. So sometimes when I'm going through a lesson with my student, it's helpful for me to emphasize main vocabulary or main words in the instructions, just to make sure that she understands it. So that's just another way that you can put emphasis on a word that you might, in real life or in face-to-face classes, you might point to these or underline them. That's possible to do through this program as well. Just a couple other logistical tools that you can use in this program. Up here in the top right corner, there's a little bookmark. So you can bookmark the page if you want to come back to it later. And if you click on this little person icon, you can see a list of the pages that you've bookmarked and any notes that you've made in the lesson as well. So I have two notes that I've made on this page specifically, and then one on a later page in the lesson. So this is a good way to just kind of keep track of what you've done in the book so far. And then the last thing that I want to show you guys directly in Presentation Plus is up here at the top, you'll see this tab is labeled Students Book that we're in right now. If you click on this tab that says Links over here, this will take you to a page that looks like this. And I know several teachers have been using the Ventures Arcade site just to do extra practice online, which can be really helpful for students. So you can go directly to Ventures Arcade straight from this program by using this link. So you'll just click on this and it'll pull up Ventures Arcade in a browser basically, and you'll be able to choose which level and which unit you'd like to work in. So that's another way that you can get really great practice, and it's like I said, directly connected to the Presentation Plus program here. So I'm gonna pause really quickly and stop sharing the screen. Does anybody have any initial questions about Presentation Plus before I move into the next program that we can look at?
Hey Beth, this is Lee. I've got a question.
Yeah.
Are the trainings online, are they the same as the books that our students would have?
Yes, that's a good question. So the program that we just looked at, that's it's the exact same content as the student's book. So that book that is in color that has all the main lesson material that you use every week for class. And then the next program that we're going to look at is basically an interactive online version of the workbook, which is the other book that your student has that they typically get homework or extra practice from. So yeah, so hopefully I'm answering your question, but basically yes, they're the exact same content as the physical books that you have. Does that answer the question, Lee? We'll message her in a second and see. But anybody else have any questions about Presentation Plus before we move on to the next one? Okay, awesome. Great. So as I mentioned, Presentation Plus is really helpful as you're going through the main lesson with your student out of that student's book, but unfortunately you can only get the student's book in that program. If your student is looking to get some more practice in a specific area, or if you feel like you need some extra review, if you want to do some work out of the workbook that your student has, I'm going to go through our second tool, which is, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again before I get ahead of myself. I'm going to go back here. So again, just to recap, the information that you'll need to download Presentation Plus is all going to be in this spreadsheet. And then the manual will be there as well. So you'll be able to get instructions for how to download it and everything. There are separate installation programs for a PC and for a Mac. So just make sure that you are using the right one for the computer that you have. So the next system that we're going to look at, or the next program, is called the Cambridge Learning Management System. And this is actually through a website as opposed to something you have to download. So it's a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more accessible, but kind of works generally the same way. Basically, you'll do the same thing in that you'll open it up and use something like Zoom or Facebook Messenger that has a screen share feature, and you'll perform the exercises collaboratively with your student. So I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, all of the instructions for how to access this are going to be in this PowerPoint that you can read through later, but I'm going to go ahead and walk you guys through what logging in will look like and what creating an account will look like. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to cambridgelms.org. So cambridgelms.org. And I think it's going to automatically log me. Oh, no, good. So the first thing you'll see is this, this site or this page that says choose your course and start learning. We are working with Cambridge on trying to get these programs, versions of these programs for touchstones and grammar and use and vocabulary and use in some of the other textbook series that we work with more frequently. As of right now, we only really have them available for ventures, but if you and your student are using a different curriculum set, just know that that's something that's in the works that will hopefully be available for you as well soon. But for now, I'm just going to show you what it looks like when you're doing it with ventures. So you're going to go to this drop-down menu. You're going to go all the way down until you get to, there's going to be an option for Ventures and for Ventures 3rd edition. So you're going to want Ventures 3rd edition. So that's the edition we're all using now. You're going to click Go. And then you'll come to this, this site here. So we initially had tried to create just like a general volunteer account that everyone could be using, but we ran into some issues with not being able to have very many people logged in at once. So there were some scheduling conflicts and things like that that came up. So, so that being said, the easiest way for you to access this is to register for your own account. It's free, it takes very little time, and it doesn't really ask you for very much information. So it should be pretty straightforward. But so basically what you're going to do is you're going to click on the register tab here. You're going to go down to this drop down menu and just select I am a teacher. And then you're just going to fill in this information down here. So it'll ask you for your full name. It'll ask you to create a username, enter an email address, and a password. The most kind of like the most detailed personal information it'll ask you is a date of birth. And that's really only to verify that you're over 18 and that, you know, that you can use that to retrieve your password if you forget it. So if you're not comfortable putting in your regular your real birthday, you can kind of pick an arbitrary date that you can remember as long as it says you're over 18. That's totally fine. So you'll accept and agree to the terms of use and then click register once you've filled all the information in. You'll get an email in your inbox for that just says to verify your email address for your account. And then you'll come back here to this page and click login. So for now, I'm just going to log in with our account. So IRWP volunteer. I'm going to log in and hopefully it loads in a timely manner. Let's see, there it goes. Okay. And then once you get into this main page, you're going to go to up here at the top. There's a toolbar up here. You're going to go to My Teaching. So you're going to click on that. And then the first time you log in, you're going to want to create a class. So you'll click on the Create a Class button. You'll create a name for the class. It can be whatever you would like it to be. You'll select Ventures and your level as the series title, and then the correlating course name. So if you're in Ventures Level 2, your course name will be Ventures Level 2. And then you'll just click Create Class. So pretty straightforward. Right now, I'm going to look at one of the classes that we have created as an example. So I created this one theoretically for my student and I to work on. So I'm going to click on the class name, and it'll take me to the main page, and I'm going to click on the content tab when I get to my class. And the content page is where you'll be able to access the actual material from the workbook. So what it'll look like is this list of of unit lesson names, basically. And you'll be able to see, it'll track your progress in terms of like how much you've done in previous exercises. So you'll be able to see what you've done so far and what you haven't. So if you click show all, like right here where my mouse is, click that. I can see that my student and I have completed the first 3 exercises for Unit 1, Lesson A. So we've left off with Unit 1, Exercise 4. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I'm going to see, and that'll take me directly to the exercise for you to do. So some of them are going to be things like fill in the blank or matching. For some of them, like this one, you're going to have to do, you're going to have to listen to an audio clip and choose the correct answers. So just as an example, I'm going to go back to a previous exercise that's a little bit easier to navigate without audio. Let me pull up the folks here. Sarah, do you mind being my student again as we go through this? Okay, so Sarah is going to be my student, and so we're going to kind of demonstrate what it would look like to go through an exercise like this with your student. So a quick thing to keep in mind as we get started with this is that as you're sharing your screen with your student, you are the one who is able to click on links, to navigate pages, play audio, things like that. Your student will be able to see what you're doing, but they won't be able to click on anything or type anything in. So as you're going through these exercises, it's important to make sure that your student is actively engaged in the exercise. And you can do that with verbal cues. You can incorporate the chat feature if that's helpful. Just as long as you have some way of making sure that your student is involved in the process. So I think like one of the great ways to do that is having your student read things out loud with you, and just making sure that they know where you're at on the page. So Sarah and I are going to demonstrate that really quickly. So Sarah, can you read the directions?
Yes. Drag and drop the correct answers.
Perfect. And you know what?
Answers? I misread that. Words.
Happens.
The correct words.
So make sure that they understand the instructions before you jump in, and then as you're doing this, basically like you'll be verbally directing your student and taking cues as to what you should be selecting in terms of the answers. So Sarah, we are going to take these words and we're going to put them into 3 groups. So hair length, hair color, hair type. And if this was my actual student, we would probably do a little bit of review, just making sure that they know what length and color and type is, but just for the sake of time. So what is the first word, Sarah? What is this word?
Short.
Okay. Is short a length, a color, or a type?
A type.
Type, okay. So put it over here. Some teachers, approach correcting differently than others, so that's kind of a personal preference between you and your student. Typically, what I'll do as I'm going through an exercise is I will kind of do what my student dictates and then do corrections at the end if they have incorrect answers. Other people prefer to kind of do that process as they move along. So again, it's kind of what works best for you. But what is the next word, Sarah?
Straight.
Straight. Is straight a length, a color, or a type?
A type.
Very good. Okay. And again, just to reiterate, I'm the one who is moving the words. I'm the one who's clicking on everything. I'm being directed what to do by Sarah. So what about this word, Sarah? What is this word?
Curly.
Is curly a length, a color, or a type?
A type.
Okay. Lots of types right now. Okay. And the next word, what is this?
Brown.
Okay. Is brown a length, color, or type?
A color.
Color. And the next word?
Black.
What is black?
A color.
Okay. Okay. And the next word, this one.
Blonde.
And is blonde a length, a color, or a type?
A color.
And one more. What is this word?
Long.
Is long a length, a color, or a type?
A length.
So once you have all of your answers put where you want them to or entered in the way you want to, you'll click the blue submit button here, and it'll show you which ones are correct and which ones are incorrect. So you'll be able to choose between clearing all of the answers and starting the exercise over, or you can choose to just clear the wrong answers. So let's just clear the wrong answer. I'll say okay. So Sarah, short is not a type. What do you think short is? Is it a length or a color?
A length.
So you can try again. And then once you do all the corrections, submit again, and you can see that you've gotten them all right. Great job, Sarah. And then once you have completed the exercise, you can you can directly go on to the next exercise by clicking up here, and it'll take you straight to the next page as it loads. And then you can also, if you would like to go back to the main page, you can go back up here to content, and it'll show you where you're at and what else you can do. So you can go back to that page as well from here. So yeah, that is the bulk of the learning management system. Like I said, since it is an online program, it's a little bit more straightforward, a little bit easier to jump into than the Presentation Plus, but both are really, really helpful tools if you're able to screen share with your student. It's just a good way to, again, like literally make sure that you and your student are on the same page. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing, and I'm gonna unmute everyone. Let's see. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask about learning management system or any or the other program that we saw earlier?
I have a question about the registration.
Yeah.
So I noticed at the top of the registration box, it says sign in with, Facebook or Google, or, create your own account. So can we just sign in with our regular Google email and regular Google password, or do we have to make up a new
I actually haven't tried either of those options, but I think since they're presented, if that's something that's more straightforward, more accessible, that's totally fine. Since you're registering your own account, it's all up to your personal preference. So that's definitely an option if you would like to use that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal to create a new password or a new account,
Right.
but I noticed it at the top, it said sign in this way, or create a new
Exactly.
account.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions about that program or how to use it?
I have a quick question. This is Alex. I have a quick question about the program that came beforehand when you showed the Ventures books. Is it also possible to use that to access the citizenship curriculum in any way, the books we use for that?
So the Presentation Plus does not have citizenship, but you do have a couple options. So if you remember the Ventures Arcade page that we looked at very briefly, that does have a citizenship component. And then another good option is in the back of the the general teacher's guide, the bound one with all the applications and everything. There's a list of online resources there that you can look at with online flashcards and audio practice, things like that. So that's those are good places to start for the citizenship.
Okay.
Presentation Plus.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Anybody else?
This is Diane. Are the students allowed to download the program, or just the teachers?
Yeah, that's another great question. So they are welcome to download it if they would like. Like I said, for Presentation Plus, the first one, it requires you to have a computer to download it on, so it doesn't work as well over a phone, which is why it works the best for the teacher to download it and then use the screen share app. The learning management system, the second one with the workbook, is a little bit easier. So for that one, all you have to do really is you can create the account for you and your student to share, and then you can just text them, you know, and say like, go to this address, use this username and password, and they'll be able to log in and do that page in the exact same way that you would. So if it's easier, if that's something that your student feels comfortable navigating, and it's easier for them to go in and do those exercises as opposed to you doing the physical work of it, that's another great option as well.
Thank you.
I also have a question about the screen sharing.
Yeah.
Is that something that if you have, you know, if you open up the Zoom app, is the screen sharing part of the Zoom app, or do you have to download a screen sharing app, like a separate app?
Right. Christina, do you want to field that one actually, since it's your?
Sure.
Yeah.
The screen sharing is part of the Zoom app.
Okay.
It's at the bottom. Do you see the icons at the bottom of your screen that say invite participants?
Well, I'm on an iPad, so everything's in the upper
Okay.
left. But yes, I do see that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's part of Zoom. I think for Facebook Messenger, for those of you that are using that, you do have to add an extension, I think it's called, and it's really easy. Something pops up and you just click add. But you have to be using Chrome. I think I forgot to say that before, but you do have to be using Chrome for that. But on Zoom, no, it's connected with Zoom.
So yeah, so what if I have the Zoom app, I don't have to do anything, that the screen sharing will be there already. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a feature in all of these apps that that is really helpful. Yeah. So other questions about the curriculum or anything else we've covered so far? Awesome. Well, in that case, I'm going to check this chat here really quickly. That was just Julie making a comment. So with that, I'm going to send it over to Sarah, and she's going to go over some kind of like pedagogical ideas for how to make sure that your classes, your remote classes are effective, and your communication over video is effective, and then go over some like general logistical things about, you know, how to report and what the next few months are going to look like.
Logistics.
Yay. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and remute everyone. So Sarah, if you want to unmute yourself.
All right, so I am going to share my screen here, and we're going to go back to the presentation. Oh, that is before we anticipated. Okay. Yeah, so the first thing we're going to talk about is reporting. We are still asking that everybody report to us, even though maybe you're taking a complete break and all you've done with your student is have some texting conversations or speak on the phone. We want to know exactly what's going on, so we're still expecting you to report every month. That said, the form's going to look a little bit different. So, for example, there won't be anything about mileage because we know you're not driving, and there won't be anything about hours because it's a little bit different now. So the hours we're going to actually just calculate on our end. What we are going to ask about is the number of classes. So that's just the number of times that you made contact with your student, whether or not you ended up going over the curriculum. So with one small caveat, the texting, it should be a text message sort of conversation, not just like one message sent one direction. In the comments section, we want to know what exactly you did. So an example would be if I were doing it with my student Karima, I would say, Karima and I texted every week at least twice. We also had 3 phone calls and 2 Zoom sessions, and 1 class using Ventures Basic Unit 4 Lesson C. So that would allow me to sort of see exactly what we went over, or you and your student went over, presumably. And then the other thing is to note that the question section is still open. We want to hear from you, and you can always call or email us, but especially in your report, anything from curriculum to like your online teaching to something more resource focused about COVID. To move on to some tips for teaching virtually. One thing that's worked well for some folks is to send some pre-work to your student. So that might be vocabulary to study or audio to listen to beforehand. We also want everybody to remember to practice writing. Beth kind of showed you it doesn't come as naturally. You don't get the opportunity to write together, and you're not able to sort of look at your student write, look over their shoulder as they write. So you want to give intentional opportunities for your student to practice their writing. And you're going to probably need to be creative with that. It could be as simple as having them write in their notebook and then sort of like show you on your screen. Or maybe you could do emails back and forth. I know a teacher that I work with is doing letters back and forth. I know of teachers who have been using the whiteboard more intentionally just because it's easier to see, it's a little bigger. So just be creative. And then in terms of body language, as you communicate, so like right now, I might say I'm doing okay with like how I've positioned my screen, but if I really wanted to be intentional about it, I would put my chair back so that you could see my whole torso here. And then I would use my, the body language that I typically use in classes. I would say, I will speak and then you listen. And you can still do all of those things using the hand motions that you've already employed with your student to teach online. The other thing is, as you're teaching online, especially if you're screen sharing like I am right now, you're going to be using your mouse. And so you want to do that really intentionally. And I wrote here, slow down, because it's hard to track a mouse when it's all over the page. So you want to slow down and, circle where you are. And that brings us to transitions. As you're doing transitions, it might be necessary to sort of very explicitly say, okay, next, and then zoom into a specific part on your page. You're just going to need to make them super clear because you're not going to be as hands-on as you typically would be with your student. Okay, and then in terms of gauging comprehension or analyzing progress, you might need to ask questions instead of, did you understand? Maybe asking a more direct question like, what part should we go over again? Just making sure that your student is able to participate in their learning and really let you know when they're not comprehending something or what part could be better if you went over it again. And then the other tool that I think could be helpful right now would be asking your student to explain to you the concept that they just learned. But a quick note on that, it's pretty tricky, especially if you don't have a lot of language. So don't correct your student in something that's outside the content area. So for instance, if I was teaching Karima a grammar concept, I would ask her to explain that grammar concept. But if she made errors in vocabulary or even grammar outside of the specific content that we are talking about, I would not correct those, just because we would want that communication to be more free-flowing. And then just to adjust our expectations, everybody's expectations of progress. So it is not as easy to teach or to learn online, and so it's going to be slower and more confusing. So we're just asking everybody to be flexible and patient, both with us as staff, but also with yourselves as teachers and with our students as learners. Okay, so if Beth would unmute everybody, I'm just gonna ask if anybody has already done, and I'll stop sharing here. If anybody's already been doing online, even just communicating with their student, I'd love to hear from you all what's worked well for you and what's been challenging.
We've been texting back and forth.
Yeah.
But the texting, at least it's, writing skills and stuff like that. So that,
Definitely.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of emailing. I don't know why I didn't think of that, to write to her and have her write back to me. I think that's good too.
Yeah.
So.
Has anybody else?
I've just done texting. So we
Okay.
haven't done any real content at all.
Yeah, me too with my student. I don't feel bad or pressured to do more than what you're able to right now. We don't want to make this stressful at all. So I just want to make that really clear. But I just wanted to hear if people have experience.
And I kind of want to circle back because I think it's a really great kind of like first step in that direction. Christina had mentioned WhatsApp in her initial talk. WhatsApp is a tool that a lot of our students are very familiar with already. They use it very frequently to communicate with friends and family back home. And it's basically, it works basically the same as any other like texting or messaging app, but instead of like using instead of using data or using a phone plan, you can just use it with Wi-Fi, so it's a little bit more accessible for folks. But one of the really nice features on WhatsApp is that you can do kind of voice memos. So it's kind of like sending a verbal text message. So instead of like scheduling a time where you're both talking on the phone at the same time, you can send a verbal message that just says, "Hi Karima, how are you? I hope you're doing well." And then she can listen to that and respond verbally to it. So that's kind of a good like next step if you've been texting, but you want to get a little bit more interactive practice or a little bit more audio and like speaking and listening practice. That's a really good next step as you're going through and kind of easing it.
Awesome. If we don't have anyone else who wants to share right away, feel free to use the chat, of course, if you have more ideas or thoughts. I am going to share my screen again. Let's see. Okay, so the next part here, oh, come on, there you go, is about creating those low risk and low stakes lessons. So we already do this as a program, and I think it's what makes our program so effective and so cool, is that we really try to follow the lead of our students as they sort of take ownership of their own learning. And in that way, we want to let our student lead the way in terms of these three things here especially. So in terms of pace, make sure, or it might be possible that your student's able to, really get through as much material as you've been getting through one-on-one, but it also might be true that it'll just go more slowly. And really that's more likely. So we don't want you to feel pressured to go over more material than you get through naturally. And we also don't want, you to pressure your student or to feel pressure from us to do that. The other thing is in terms of frequency. So obviously, like COVID has turned everybody's schedules upside down. So it might be true that your student has just as much time as they had before to do their lessons. And it might be true that they're only really able to do one lesson every 2 weeks. And it's just really important to let her or him set that schedule. And then the other thing to note is in terms of content of lessons. So like I said, COVID has just like rocked our worlds. And for a lot of us, that has meant, like facing new challenges or experiencing things that we don't expect to experience. So if it's true that your student just wants to talk about their experience with COVID, that's a great way to use your time as well. And so just know that that's just as important as any sort of English practice you would be going on or going over. And additionally, if you're practicing or if you're talking to each other in English, you're still doing some English practice. So don't feel like you're wasting your time if you're doing that. And then to kind of flip pages and go over more of the technological stuff. As staff, we will do our very best to support you and your student in whatever way that looks. But basically, we're all going to be learning about this technology, how to use it, how it does with these different programs as we go. That's going to be true for your student and for you and for us as well. But our core goal, like really what we want to do is provide, access to community for our students to reduce the isolation that they might be experiencing right now. So your interactions with your student right now are already beautiful. And so we want to remain grounded in that. So I guess what I'm saying is be flexible. There's no one way. For a while, it might look like you're on the phone with your student and you're both on a Zoom call as well, and you're talking through how to make Zoom work. And that's okay. So just don't feel like it's gonna be perfectly wonderful the very first time. But if it is, congratulations. And then in terms of COVID specific stuff. So a lot of our students have needed, you know, additional resources in this time as people are losing jobs and are out of work and that kind of thing. The place I've gone first has been this STL response dashboard. I'm actually going to click on this link and take you there. So this is a website specific to St. Louis that has all sorts of resources. Oh, it changed since this morning. It's ever evolving. I found it super useful. But basically, this is the 211 crisis hotline right here. I've called them many times just to see what resources are available in what area to what need. They're very helpful. They're very patient with people. So feel free to call that if that's what you need. There's health information here. If your student is either doesn't have documentation or is in a mixed status family, this might be one way for your student to receive aid, excuse me, as they're not eligible for the federal aid. And then there's multicultural and multi-language resources right there. That's also very helpful. And then I'm just gonna scroll down here. There's a table of contents with all of these different areas of support. And so the number here that you see is like the number of resources that they have specific to that kind of thing. And so it really is vast and wonderful. All right. And then, excuse me. The Immigrant Service Providers Network, or ISPN, has also put together this list of testing sites. So when we send this out, you'll be able to click on that link. It's just a Google document that has all of the testing sites in the area. If your student's experiencing symptoms that are consistent with COVID, that's a place where anybody could go to be tested. And then the last thing is that ISPN has also created the St. Louis Building Bridges Solidarity Fund. So that's with a special focus again on those families that either don't have documentation or mixed status, as they aren't eligible for federal relief. Yeah, and so if that's true for your student, or your student needs that kind of thing, or you know of someone who needs that, I think the application for that should be up and running next week at the latest. And so you can feel free and contact us and we'll forward that information your way. And that kind of concludes where we're at. I see that there are some, I'll stop sharing my screen here. I see that there are some, oh, the fund is now named Immigrant Family Emergency Fund. So, excuse me, sorry about that. But again, if you need any support in that realm, let me know, or let us know and we can forward you that information.
Ever evolving. You know how everything goes as it evolves through all of its courses. So you'll be seeing it soon. We're on top of it.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie.
Awesome. So does anybody have any questions about any of like the logistical or pedagogical things that Sarah went over, or really any questions in general about the things that we've talked about today? Great. Erin says, thank you for the information. We're really happy that it was helpful. Yeah, I feel like we're all just kind of trying to figure this out as we go. And so we, as staff, appreciate your patience and appreciate you bearing with us. And like we said earlier, just being willing to jump into new things and adapt as you're able to, and keep with us as much as you're able to. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Give it a try.
Yeah, exactly. We're figuring it out as we go.
Yeah. It's going to take me some time to navigate through it, but I'm going to try to plow through it.
And that's all you can do, and that's totally fine. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up then. Like I said, this we've recorded this session and we'll be sending out a recording as well as the PowerPoint notes to everyone tomorrow. So just look for that and you'll be able to access all the resources that we talked about, as well as instructions for how to use them. And then again, in addition to that, as always, we're always available for follow-up questions. So feel free to call, email, however is easiest for you to get in touch with us. We are here to help you figure this out, and we'll figure it out together. So thank you all so much again, and hopefully everyone has a wonderful evening.
Thank you, guys.
Good evening, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Bye,
y'all.
everybody. Thanks again.